In 1895, wealthy American heiresses were literally purchased for $2.5 million each by British aristocrats, treated more like valuable stock than people. Dukes commanded a higher price than earls, and your father paid a fortune for yours. If these tales help you drift off, a like or subscribe would be appreciated. And let me know where you're tuning in from and when. It's always wild to see comments from places like Australia and Norway on the same video. Now, let's head back to 1895. It's going to be quite a journey. But first, adjust your pillows, pull up your blanket, because you'll want to be comfortable for this. The air hits you first, thick, damp, with the taste of coal. London, 1895. Your eyes adjust to the gray light slipping through strange curtains. The bed beneath you isn't the one from your New York mansion. This one is heavier, older. The linen is fine, but carries a lingering mildew that never leaves these ancient houses. Your body aches from the crossing. 8 long days at sea. 8 days of seasickness while your mother drilled etiquette into you. 8 days of swallowing tears as America slipped away, maybe forever. This mattress is stuffed with horsehair that pokes through, and though it's May, the room feels icy. Welcome to your new reality as a duchess. You sit up slowly, and the truth sinks in again. The ring on your finger glitters with diamonds and sapphires, a 300-year-old family heirloom. It feels heavy, oversized, like everything else in this world. It wasn't made for you. Good morning, Your Grace. The voice startles you. A maid, no, your lady's maid, stands silently by the fire. You never heard her enter. In New York, servants knocked. Here, they move like ghosts, always present, always watching. Shall I open the curtains for your grace? She asks, her accent turning the words into something foreign. You nod, because what else can you do? You're no longer Charlotte Miller of Fifth Avenue. You're Her Grace, the Duchess of Harrington, and you have no idea what that truly means. The curtains open, and London floods the room, or at least one of your rooms in one of your many houses. Harrington House stretches across nearly an entire block in Mayfair, 64 rooms, 11 fireplaces, and a staff of 38, all of them now under your authority. You're just 20, an American girl who until yesterday only managed her social calendar. And now, His Grace requests your presence for breakfast. In the morning room at 9, Your Grace, the maid says, already laying out clothes, not the ones you brought from New York. Those had been quietly taken from your trunks the night before. American fashion, it seemed, wasn't acceptable for a duchess, even one from America. Your stomach knots. You've been married for only 16 days, most of them spent at sea. Your husband, the Duke, is nearly a stranger, a 40-year-old man with cold eyes and a title dating back to the Norman Conquest. You'd only met him 3 times before the wedding, always under chaperoned watch. What time is it now? You ask, your voice small in the cavernous room. 7:45, Your Grace. 45 minutes. That's all you have to transform from a frightened American girl into an English duchess. You want to bury yourself under the covers and disappear, but that's impossible. Your father had paid far too much for this marriage for you to retreat. Picture this. You stand before a mirror while 3 women you've never seen before dress you, not help you dress, but physically dress you like a doll. One yanks at your corset laces until your ribs creak and your breath comes in shallow gasps. Another pins your hair into a style you've never worn. A third kneels, sliding silk stockings up your legs. Because apparently, a duchess doesn't even put on her own socks. Is this really necessary for breakfast? You manage to ask between strained breaths. Your lady's maid, Stevens, you think, looks appalled. His Grace expects a proper appearance at all times. Of course he does. The Duke of Harrington, your husband, expects many things: perfect appearance, flawless manners, and eventually, proper heirs. That's why you're here. $2 million exchanged for a title, a lineage, an heir, nothing more than a business deal disguised as marriage. They dress you in navy blue silk with a stiff high collar and endless buttons. It's elegant, but in a severe, unmistakably English way. Nothing like the vibrant gowns you wore back in New York. This makes you look older, sterner, less American. When they're done, you barely recognize the woman staring back from the mirror. She could be anyone, any English lady polished enough to pass at breakfast. Is this what your mother had in mind when she paraded you through London society last year? Is this what your father's money bought? You're led through corridors lined with ancestral portraits, each face bearing the same cold gaze as your husband's. These distant Harrington relatives are now tied to you by contract, not blood. The house itself is a labyrinth, built to overwhelm rather than invite. Your steps echo across marble floors, past furniture older than your entire country. The morning room is smaller than you'd imagined, yet still imposing with its silk-covered walls and manicured garden view. And there he is, the Duke, reading his paper as though nothing in the world has changed. "Ah, Charlotte," he says without looking up. "Not my dear, not even good morning. Just your name, spoken flatly, as if recalling it is an effort. I trust you slept well." "Yes, thank you," you lie. You'd cried silently into a pillow that smelled unfamiliar, in a bed that felt like it belonged to someone else. "Good. We have much to discuss." His eyes lift to you at last, cool and appraising, not warm. "You'll need to learn quickly. The season is beginning, and all eyes will be on the American Duchess." The way he says American makes it sound like an affliction. Heat rises in your cheeks, anger, humiliation. Your family's fortune may have rescued his estate, but your heritage is still treated like a shame. "I've arranged for Lady Harwick to call this afternoon. She'll begin your education." There's a faint twitch at the corner of his mouth, almost amusement. "The Queen has asked to meet you at next week's garden party. We cannot have you embarrassing the family." The Queen Victoria herself, and all you can think is how you'll trip on your gown and spark an international disaster. A footman arrives with breakfast, eggs, kippers, toast, everything smelling alien, fishy. Your stomach clenches again. "You're very quiet, Charlotte," the Duke remarks, finally folding his newspaper. You want to scream, to tell him you've been torn from everything you know, bound to a stranger, and thrust into a world where you don't even know the rules. To ask whether he sees you as a woman at all, or just a solution to his debts. Instead, you manage, "I'm still adjusting to the journey, Your Grace." "Edward," he corrects absently. "In private, you may call me Edward." It's the first almost kind thing he said. You try to force a smile, but your face refuses to cooperate. "Your lady's maid," Edward continues. "Is she suitable?" You have no idea what makes a lady's maid suitable. "She seems very efficient," you offer. "She comes highly recommended. Serve the Countess of Merrick before her passing." He sips his tea. "If she doesn't suit, we can find another." The casual way he talks about replacing someone, like servants are furniture to be swapped out, unsettles you. Back home, your staff had been with your family for years. You knew their names, their children. "I'm sure she'll be fine," you say, then instantly wonder if that sounded too American. Should a duchess be more concerned about securing the perfect maid? "I'll be at my club until dinner," Edward announces, rising abruptly. "Lady Harwick will arrive at 2. Do try to pay attention to her instructions, Charlotte. The Harrington name has stood for 8 centuries. I won't have it tarnished now." And then he's gone, leaving you in a room that feels too large, too silent, clothed in garments that feel too stiff, living a life that feels utterly foreign. The instant he departs, servants seem to materialize from the walls. The butler asks your preferences for dinner. The housekeeper requests approval for weekly menus. The social secretary, yes, apparently you have one, produces a stack of calling cards from aristocrats eager to examine the American Duchess. I don't," you stammer, overwhelmed by questions about people and customs you don't even understand. Mrs. Finch, the secretary, sharp-eyed and thin, steps forward. "Perhaps, Your Grace, we might review these matters after your session with Lady Harwick?" Relief floods you. "Yes, that would be preferable." The others bow and curtsy before slipping away, leaving you with Mrs. Finch. "If I may be so bold," she says once the room is clear, "might I suggest a tour of the house? It would be beneficial to become familiar with your new home." Your new home. 64 rooms heavy with guilt, history, and judgment. But she's right. You can't hide in the morning room forever. "Yes, thank you," you reply, straightening, trying to borrow your mother's air of confidence. "That would be most helpful." The next hour passes in a blur of chambers, each more imposing than the last. The grand drawing room for important visitors, the blue drawing room for smaller gatherings, the vast dining hall seating 40, the library filled with volumes older than America itself. The Duke's study, where you're told you may never enter uninvited. Rules pile up in your mind. Never use the grand staircase if the servants will do. Never address the butler in front of guests. Never wear diamonds before evening. Never, never, never appear anything less than flawless. By the time you reach the portrait gallery, your head throbs. Rows of Harrington ancestors glare down at you. Men with Edward's same cold eyes. Women with rigid smiles. Many of them, you realize, were American heiresses, just like you. Their fortunes devoured by this house and its endless demands. "This is the late Duchess," Mrs. Finch says, pausing before a portrait of a severe woman with Edward's thin mouth, his mother. You study the face, searching for clues about the family you've married into. Proud, unyielding, no trace of warmth in those painted eyes. What was she like? You ask, hoping for something more. Mrs. Finch hesitates, her polished composure slipping just slightly. She was devoted to maintaining the dignity of the Harrington name, Your Grace, which tells you everything and nothing all at once. And this, Mrs. Finch continues, moving to the next portrait, is the 8th Duke and Duchess, American like yourself. The woman in the painting is young, beautiful, but her eyes carry a quiet sadness. Another dollar princess. Another American sold to preserve an English title. What happened to her? You ask, unable to look away from that sorrowful face. She died quite young, Your Grace. Childbed fever after delivering the heir. Your stomach lurches. Of course, the heir. That's your future too. Pregnancy, childbirth, producing the next Duke of Harrington. That's what your father's fortune purchased, what Edward expects, what England demands. Inside you're screaming, this is how I'll die. In this cold country, in this colder house, giving birth to a child who will inherit everything, including his father's disdain for America. Mrs. Finch must read your expression because her tone softens. Perhaps we should continue to the gardens, Your Grace. Fresh air might help. You nod silently and follow her through more endless corridors, past more accusing portraits, through more rooms that aren't yours. At least the gardens are beautiful. Formal lines of hedges stretch toward a small lake where distant groundskeepers tend the land. More staff, faces you'll never really know. The roses are particularly fine in June, Mrs. Finch notes, her eyes on you. The late Duke was most proud of them. You think of your family's gardens in Newport, wild, overflowing with summer blooms, the ocean wind laced with salt and freedom. Here, even the flowers are restrained, forced into neat, predictable patterns. Your Grace, Mrs. Finch says after a pause, if I may offer some advice? Please, you answer, hungry for guidance. English society can be difficult for those not born to it, but you're not the first American Duchess, and you won't be the last. She lifts her chin, posture flawless. Observe closely, speak little until you're sure, and remember, while they may criticize your accent or your manners, your position cannot be touched. You are the Duchess of Harrington. It's the first honest thing anyone has said to you since arriving. Not comforting exactly, but real. Thank you, Mrs. Finch, you say, and mean it. A clock chimes somewhere deep in the house. Mrs. Finch glances at her watch. Lady Harwick will arrive shortly, Your Grace. We should return and prepare. You take one last look at the manicured garden, the small piece of England that now belongs to you, then follow Mrs. Finch back into the mausoleum you're expected to call home. The house feels even more vast from the inside than it had from your carriage last night. Ceilings soar into shadow, furniture from the 18th century sits heavy and stiff, built more for display than comfort. Everything gleams with the relentless labor of unseen servants. Your Grace, if I may, Mrs. Finch says as you near the main staircase. Lady Harwick is traditional in her views. It would be wise to listen more than speak during your first meeting. Perfect. Another person ready to find you hopelessly American and inadequate. I understand, you reply. Very good, Your Grace. Stevens will assist you in changing for Lady Harwick's visit. Changing again? You glance at the navy silk gown you've worn for only 3 hours. Mrs. Finch's expression stays neutral, though you sense a flicker of disapproval. Morning attire is not suitable for an afternoon call, Your Grace. Stevens will have prepared something appropriate. Of course. Heaven forbid you wear the same dress for an entire day. You nod and climb the stairs, every step heavier than the last. Your bedroom, no, the Duchess's bedroom, still foreign to you, has been neatly ordered in your absence. Stevens is already waiting with yet another gown laid across the bed. Lady Harwick is quite punctual, Your Grace, she greets. We should begin dressing immediately. And so it begins again. Unlacing, relacing, pinning, buttoning. This time a dark green gown heavy with elaborate beading, weighing you down like armor. The corset is cinched even tighter, your breath shallow. Hair adjusted, powder applied, your very self reshaped into something unrecognizable. Will I need to change again before dinner? You ask, weary. Of course, Your Grace. Dinner requires evening dress, Stevens replies, as though it's the most obvious thing in the world. You close your eyes briefly. 4 outfits in a single day. In New York, you might change for a ball or a dinner party, not simply to sit in another room of your own home. Your Grace, Stevens interrupts your thoughts. Lady Harwick has arrived. You straighten your shoulders despite your corset's protest. Time to meet the woman tasked with teaching you how to be English. Lady Harwick waits in the smaller drawing room. She's bird-like, dressed head to toe in black, though not in mourning. Her gray hair is pulled so tightly it distorts her face while giving her a look of perpetual surprise. She doesn't rise when you enter, a deliberate slight, you're sure. So, she says, peering at you through a lorgnette, you're the American, not Your Grace, not the Duchess, just the American. You force a smile and extend your hand. Charlotte Harrington, it's a pleasure to meet you, Lady Harwick. She ignores your hand. You let it fall back awkwardly to your side. Sit, she commands, gesturing to the chair opposite. You obey, trying to maintain dignity as humiliation burns your cheeks. Let us be clear from the start, Lady Harwick says, setting her lorgnette aside. You have purchased a title that has belonged to Edward's family for centuries. Your father's railroad fortune may have saved Harrington House, but it does not make you worthy to be its mistress. Her bluntness steals your breath. In New York, gossip might sting, but never delivered so directly to your face. Ah, you begin, but she silences you with a raised hand. I am not interested in your feelings, child. I am here at Edward's request to ensure you do not shame him or the Harrington name. You will listen, you will learn, and you will become what England requires of you. Inside, your thoughts race. No bath for 3 months, death by stench. Except here, it's not smell that kills you. It's these people with their iron rules and frozen hearts. But outwardly, you only nod. What else can you do? Alone in a foreign country, married to a stranger, surrounded by those who see you as nothing more than money dressed in silk. Good, Lady Harwick says, satisfied with your silence. The training starts with the basics, proper forms of address for the ranks of nobility. For 2 relentless hours, Lady Harwick drills rule after rule into you. Never speak to a duke unless he speaks first, unless by marriage you outrank him, which in certain cases you now do, much to her evident displeasure. Never turn your back on royalty. Avoid politics, religion, or money in polite conversation. Titles and protocols spin through your mind. Earls, viscounts, younger sons of marquises, dowager duchesses, everyone with their own delicate mode of address that could bring offense if you slip. Suddenly, Lady Harwick declares your posture unacceptable. You rise, legs tingling from sitting too long, as she demonstrates her rigid stance, spine straight, shoulders down, chin level. A duchess, she insists, must never slouch. You copy her as best you can, feeling like a puppet on display. Better, she allows, though without warmth. Then she orders you to walk. Your steps earn sharp criticism, too large, too hurried. For 15 minutes, you pace back and forth, adjusting stride, hands, bearing, until she finally nods in partial approval. Tomorrow, she promises, will bring lessons in curtsying and in softening your harsh American accent. Even your voice is wrong. Then comes the final blow. You are to be presented to the Queen next week. Your stomach twists. Queen Victoria herself, undoubtedly the most powerful woman alive, wants to see Edward's foreign bride. Lady Harwick makes clear this is no compliment. You will curtsy deeply, speak only when spoken to, address her first as Your Majesty, and then ma'am, answering briefly and always deferring. Her parting words sting. When you face the Queen, you represent not only yourself, but centuries of English nobility. No pressure at all. With that, she departs, leaving you drained in the silent drawing room. The knock that follows feels like intrusion into your spiraling thoughts. Mrs. Finch enters, her expression carefully blank. His Grace will dine at his club tonight, she says. Would you prefer to eat in your private rooms or the smaller dining room? You choose your rooms. The thought of sitting alone in a cavernous hall is unbearable. She then asks gently if you'd like to write to your family. The suggestion breaks something inside you. Your mother had driven this marriage with unyielding ambition. Your father had treated it like a contract. Your sisters envied you for securing a duke. Do they understand what life they've cast you into? You whisper your thanks, holding back emotion. When Mrs. Finch leaves, you drift to the window. London lies gray and wet, rain falling endlessly, echoing the heaviness in your chest. Carriages rattle along the street below, filled with people who know where they're going, while you stand trapped in a gilded prison, being molded into someone you barely recognize. In this strange house, yours in name only, you wear clothes that don't feel like yours, carry a title that sits uncomfortably heavy, and try to silence the ache for the life you left behind. Quietly, you vow you'll learn their rules, adapt to their customs, and become what they demand. But in the core of your being, untouchable, you'll remain Charlotte Miller of New York. One day, somehow, you'll bend this life to your will. The room, though dripping with elegance, feels hollow, nothing like your warm bed back home. Rain taps steadily against the glass, as though sending coded messages from a world out of reach. You rest your hand against the cold pane, your breath fogging it, small proof that something alive still lingers within these suffocating walls. Tomorrow will bring more lessons, more scrutiny. Lady Harwick and her endless instructions, a household awaiting your command, a husband you hardly know, and a queen you dread meeting. But tonight, for a fleeting moment, you let yourself remember the girl you were before you became Her Grace, the Duchess of Harrington. You recall summer afternoons in Newport, the salt air filling your lungs, the freedom of laughter without consequence. You remember being simply Charlotte, just Charlotte. That girl feels as far away as the New York skyline fading into the horizon the day you sailed across the ocean. Yet she lives on, buried beneath corsets and titles, waiting. Somewhere deep within this cold, vast mansion, a clock chimes the hour. Another day slips away, one of countless more to endure. Morning arrives too quickly. Your eyes open to the same unfamiliar ceiling, the same suffocating drapes, and the same weight in your chest. For a fleeting second, before memory intrudes, you almost forget where you are. Then Stephen's voice slices through the haze. Good morning, Your Grace. Lady Harwick will arrive at 10 for your lessons. Day 2 begins exactly as day 1. Strangers dressing you, strange food set before you, and the looming certainty of judgment. The rain has gone, but the sky remains a stubborn gray, as though England itself refuses to welcome you. Edward, your husband, a word that still feels foreign, has left only a note. Business in the city. Dinner with Lord and Lady Wexford tonight. Be prepared. Be prepared. As if that means anything to you. Your morning becomes a battle with Lady Harwick and her relentless curtsy lessons. Imagine trying to sink gracefully while trapped in a gown heavier than a child, balancing a dusty book of English poetry on your head under the icy glare of a woman whose face never seems to move. Again, she snaps after your 5th failed attempt. Lower, smoother. You're not collapsing. You're honoring. Your thighs tremble with the strain. The dress digs into your ribs. The book tilts precariously. My lady, you begin, hoping for mercy. Lady Harwick, she cuts in coldly. Not my lady. That title, Lady Harwick explains, is reserved for servants addressing their employers. Another mistake. By now, you've lost track of how many errors you've made today. Lady Harwick, you correct yourself. Perhaps we might rest a moment. She exhales as though you've just suggested torching Buckingham Palace. The Queen will not rest a moment, Your Grace, nor will society wait while you regain your breath. So you sink once more into a curtsy, your knees aching, your back straining against the brutal cage of whalebone and laces. Your hands, she snaps, not clenched, relaxed, graceful. Her gaze makes you feel as though your clumsy curtsy insults 8 centuries of noble tradition. Meanwhile, you're biting back the thought that her face is an insult to evolution itself. Outwardly, though, You adjust your fingers, forcing them into something resembling elegance while your body screams in protest. Inside, you're seething. $2.5 million for this torture. Well, your father's $2.5 million. At this moment, you'd happily trade another million just to be back in New York, stretched out in the garden with a book, instead of parading around like a circus act for this withered relic of aristocracy. Better, Lady Harwick concedes at last, though her tone suggests that better is still leagues away from acceptable. Now, she continues briskly, let us review the dinner service. How many utensils belong at each place setting for a formal affair? You hesitate, mentally shuffling through yesterday's absurd parade of forks and knives. 16? 22, she corrects with open disappointment. Each with its own function, each used in precise order. We shall rehearse at luncheon. The idea of eating while under her hawk-like scrutiny is enough to make your stomach shrink, but you nod anyway. This is your life now. Endless lessons in absurdities no sane person would consider important. After luncheon, Lady Harwick continues, consulting her notebook, we shall address household management. As Duchess, you are responsible for a staff of nearly 40 at Harrington House alone, not counting the country estate. You must know their duties, their ranks, and how to guide them without appearing to give direct orders. A duchess must never be blunt. Everything here is coded, buried under layers of suggestion and unspoken expectation. No wonder the English aristocracy is withering. They're too drained by their own rules to survive. Is something amusing your grace? Lady Harwick's sharp tone jolts you back. You hadn't realized you were smiling at your own bitter thoughts. No, Lady Harwick, you reply smoothly. I'm simply eager to learn. Her pinched expression says she doesn't believe you, but she presses on. This afternoon, the dressmaker will arrive for your fitting. The garden party at Buckingham Palace is only 5 days away, and your present wardrobe is entirely unacceptable. The words garden party land like stones in your stomach. Meeting the Queen. What will be expected? Silence until addressed, a perfect curtsy, a flawless display of Harrington dignity? With a sharp snap, Lady Harwick shuts her notebook. For one afternoon, you must seem English, not American. The morning crawls by in a blur of balancing books on your head, memorizing seating precedents for aristocrats, and learning the difference between a shellfish fork and a dessert fork. By luncheon, your mind feels stuffed with trivia that seems useless for surviving your actual life. The smaller dining room, though it still seats 12, is prepared for 3. Lady Harwick, yourself, and, to your surprise, Edward, freshly returned from the city. Charlotte, he greets with a curt nod. Lady Harwick tells me you're making progress. His tone makes it clear your progress isn't enough. I'm trying, Edward. The garden party, he says, settling at the head of the table. You understand its importance? Yes, you answer, though you're unsure. Is it only about meeting the Queen, or something more? The Harringtons have served the crown for centuries, Edward explains, as if reading your thoughts. Royal favor is essential. The Queen has expressed a particular interest in you. Unusual, Lady Harwick sniffs. Her Majesty has always been curious about Americans, ever since that Churchill woman. You've heard of Jenny Jerome, the American who married Lord Randolph. Her son Winston is supposedly brilliant. Perhaps there's hope for you, too. The Queen will ask about your family, Edward continues, your father's business, your education. You will answer truthfully, but briefly. No rambling anecdotes. As if you dare. I understand. Do you? His eyes are cool. Everything, this house, our position, the Harrington legacy, depends on maintaining favor. These are not trifles, Charlotte. The meaning is clear. Don't humiliate him. Don't remind anyone that he needed American money to preserve his legacy. Above all, don't be too American. I won't disappoint you, you say, the words bitter on your tongue. Lunch is served, clear soup scented faintly of herbs. You copy Lady Harwick's every move. Napkin placed just so, spoon from the outside in, sip, never slurp. Straight back, shoulders down. The Wexfords will dine with us tonight, Edward announces. The Earl is a school friend. His wife is traditional. Another test, another chance to fail. I look forward to meeting them, you lie. Lord Wexford serves on several important committees with his grace, Lady Harwick adds. Their connection is valuable. It's all connections here. threads of influence and patronage woven over generations. In New York, power was simple. The richest won. Here, bloodlines and centuries-old alliances matter more than money. Luncheon passes in a haze of Lady Harwick's sharp corrections. Your spoon angled wrong. A bite of fish too large, posture slipping. By dessert, an unsteady blancmange, you're so tense your jaw aches. Edward doesn't notice. He and Lady Harwick talk of tenants, crop rotations, repairs to the country house, their words flowing around you as though you're invisible. When the meal ends, Edward departs without more than a perfunctory farewell. Lady Harwick leads you to the morning room where a massive ledger waits. The household accounts, she explains. As Duchess, you must review them weekly with the housekeeper and butler. The neat columns of coal, candles, wages, and wine are staggering. No wonder Edward needed your father's fortune. I've never managed household accounts before, you admit. Her expression suggests you might as well have confessed to a crime. Naturally not. American households are run like hotels, all vulgar excess. You bristle, thinking of your mother, who ran your family's estates with precision and knew every servant by name. The insult stings. I'm a quick learner, you reply, sharper than intended. Her eyebrow lifts, but she continues briskly. Mrs. Hughes the housekeeper on Mondays, Mr. Phelps the butler on Tuesdays, menus with the cook on Wednesdays, Thursdays are for correspondence, Fridays for charitable works. The Harringtons are associated with several causes. Your week is carved into duties before you've even found your footing. Every hour accounted for, every gesture prescribed. When do I? You hesitate, then push through. When do I have time for myself? Lady Harwick looks baffled. For yourself? You are Duchess of Harrington. Your time belongs to your position, your husband, and your future children. Yourself is a luxury you gave up with the title. The truth strikes like a blow. You didn't just marry Edward. You married an institution that threatens to consume you whole. At precisely 2 o'clock, the dressmaker arrives. Madame Beaumont, a severe French woman with pins in her mouth and a measuring tape draped around her neck. Undress, she commands flatly. You glance at Lady Harwick, who nods. Modesty, apparently, is another lost privilege. Stevens strips away your gown and corset until you stand in only camise and drawers, while Madame circles you like a hawk. American, she mutters. Too much here, too little there, shoulders too square, complexion too dark, hair too plain. Lady Harwick makes a noise that sounds like agreement. You feel like livestock being appraised. The garden party gown must be flawless. The Queen notices everything. For an hour, they dissect you, every inch deemed insufficient. By the end, you feel raw, judged, unwanted. Madame finally shows sketches, but Lady Harwick instantly selects the most conservative design. Cream silk, modest, elegant, undeniably English. And new corsetry, Madame adds. American designs allow too much room for breathing. Not proper for a duchess. By 4 o'clock, Lady Harwick departs, leaving you buried under books on history, genealogy, etiquette, your homework. As the door shuts, you collapse on the sofa, drained in body and spirit. Your Grace? You startle. Mrs. Finch, the social secretary, stands in the doorway. Yes, Mrs. Finch? The calling cards. She steps forward with a silver tray piled high. You should return calls to Lady Pembroke and Lady Harewood tomorrow. They are close to the Queen. Their favor would be valuable. More obligations, more tests. You nod wearily. Of course. Mrs. Finch hesitates, unusually uncertain. Lady Ashford has requested a visit tomorrow afternoon, another American who married into the English aristocracy. The idea of talking to someone who might actually understand feels like a lifeline. You agree instantly, asking that she be welcomed. Mrs. Finch gives a small nod, sympathy flickering in her eyes, and promises to arrange it for 3 right after your session with Lady Harwick. When she leaves, you stay slouched on the sofa, staring at the ceiling. An American guest, someone who might know what it's like to be judged, corrected, and forced into this creaking old system where you never quite belong. For the first time since arriving, you feel a spark of hope. That spark fades the moment Stevens enters to prepare you for dinner. Another performance. Tonight's costume, burgundy silk with a neckline lower than you'd ever choose. Another hour lost to hairpins, jewels, and endless fussing. His Grace has instructed you to wear the Harrington rubies, Stevens explains, producing a velvet case with stones the color of blood. The necklace settles around your throat with a weight that feels more like a shackle than an ornament. In the mirror, you hardly recognize the woman staring back. The rubies glow like fresh wounds against your skin. The gown reshapes you into something older, grander, almost intimidating. Your hair aches from the elaborate styling. Stevens calls you beautiful, but the word feels wrong. Not beautiful, altered, rewritten. At 7 sharp, the Wexfords arrive. Lord Wexford is stout, red-faced, with a booming laugh. Lady Wexford is sharp-boned and sharp-eyed, carrying the same air of judgment as Lady Harwick. Lord Wexford greets you loudly, kissing your hand with too much enthusiasm. The American Duchess, charming, absolutely charming. His wife's "how interesting" lands more like a dagger than a compliment. She mentions your father's railroads, and the truth is laid bare. In their eyes, you're not truly one of them. Just the daughter of a man who paid your entry fee. Edward slips to your side, steady hand at your back, steering you into the drawing room. The gesture isn't tender, but possessive, a reminder that you're meant to play your part correctly. Edward praises Charlotte's progress with Lady Harwick as a footman pours sherry. He mentions the Queen's interest in meeting her at the upcoming garden party. Lady Wexford arches her brows, clearly surprised. Lord Wexford chuckles, noting Her Majesty's fondness for Americans. Ever since young Winston Churchill began to rise, bloodlines have carried weight. The talk drifts to unfamiliar names, long past events, and coded remarks you can't unravel. You keep smiling whenever Edward looks your way, nodding when appropriate, praying not to misstep. Dinner is called. Edward escorts Lady Wexford, while Lord Wexford offers you his arm. This time, the grand dining room glitters, silver and crystal polished to perfection, candles glowing in heavy candelabras. Footmen ring the walls like watchful sentries. As the soup is set down, Lady Wexford remarks that you're to be presented at court after the garden party. You glance at Edward, who never mentioned this. He gives a small nod, confirmation of another trial you hadn't been warned about. Anxiety rises. Lady Wexford compares you to her niece, Lady Mary, who is also making her debut season, properly educated at home, with a bloodline stretching to the Norman conquest. Every word underscores how utterly unlike her you are. You manage a reply, mimicking the exact cool tone your mother once used in New York with pretentious climbers. The American system is different, you explain, with mathematics, sciences, and modern languages alongside the expected refinements. Lady Wexford looks momentarily unsettled. Edward shoots you a warning glance. Too brash, too American. But Lord Wexford laughs heartily, praising your spirit, insisting old families need fresh blood and energy. Course after course passes. Thanks to Lady Harwick's training, you avoid mistakes with the silverware and keep your conversation safe. Weather, society, the coming season. Never politics or faith. By the time the ladies retire to the drawing room, leaving the men their port and cigars, you're drained from the unrelenting performance. As you leave, you overhear Lord Wexford tell Edward he's done well with you. Still American, but not hopeless. In the drawing room, Lady Wexford studies you closely, coffee in hand, and asks how you're finding English society. You answer carefully, different in some ways, but society always means rules and appearances. She isn't charmed, but not offended either. She presses about your family, and when you explain they've gone back to America, a trace of sympathy flickers. She admits it's never easy for foreign brides, even American ones. Her guard slips for a moment. She confesses the first year is the hardest. Loneliness, constant scrutiny, the chill of the houses, even in summer. Startled, you admit you've been freezing since arrival. She advises extra blankets and a hot water bottle, noting servants won't provide them unless asked. For that brief exchange, she is no longer the imposing aristocrat, but simply another woman offering survival tips. Then the moment fades, her face closing off once more. You'll adjust, or you won't. The title remains either way. When the men rejoin, talk shifts to hunting, politics, and gossip about people you don't know. You keep smiling, laughing on cue, counting the minutes. At last, the Wexfords depart amid polite farewells and vague promises. As the door shuts, you sag with exhaustion. Not entirely disastrous, Edward remarks, his version of praise. You can't stop yourself from replying that Lady Wexford was rather forward about your shortcomings after all. Edward's mouth quirks. almost amused. Augusta Wexford would criticize even the Archangel Gabriel, he says. What matters, he reminds you, is that Lord Wexford was impressed. His sway with the Queen is not small. Always the Queen, always influence, always connections. In Edward's world, nothing exists without advantage. I'm tired, you finally admit, the mask slipping. If you'll excuse me. He studies you briefly, then nods. Another day waits. More lessons, more judgments, more reminders that you aren't the Duchess they wanted, just the one their debts required. You climb the staircase slowly, the rubies heavy against your collarbone, the Harrington name pressing down harder still. In your room, Stevens works in silence, the rubies tucked back into velvet, the gown whisked away, your hair unpinned and woven into a sleep braid. Bedtime, like dinner, is a ritual, every step measured. When he finally leaves, you stand at the window, like staring at the London night. Somewhere out there sits Lady Ashford, the American who will visit tomorrow. Someone who might understand the isolation, who might help you navigate this suffocating labyrinth of rules. You slip into the cavernous bed, clutching thin blankets, remembering Lady Wexford's remark about hot water bottles. A small, practical kindness, but it feels like the first real help you've received. Tomorrow brings Harwick's relentless lessons, another chance to falter. But it also brings Lady Ashford, and with her, perhaps, a piece of home. Exhaustion pulls at you, though the despair isn't quite as sharp as last night. One step at a time, one rule, one dinner, one connection. Beneath the silks and titles, you're still Charlotte Miller of New York. Tomorrow, you'll meet another woman who walks this same tightrope between two worlds. Sleep comes easier now, even in this cold foreign house. Your dreams are strange. Hot water bottles, American voices, Queen Victoria asking about railroad stocks while you curtsy with books balanced on your head until your knees give way. By your third day in London, a rhythm has formed. Wake shivering, dress under Stevens's hands, eat a breakfast you don't want. Endure Lady Harwick until your mind feels stuffed with wool. The routine is numbing, almost a comfort. Except today is different. Today, Lady Ashford is coming. Harwick notices your distraction during her lecture on how to address younger sons of dukes versus those of earls. Your Grace, she snaps, am I boring you? No, Lady Harwick, you reply smoothly. I'm simply processing. Processing, she repeats with disdain. How very American. In England, we simply learn. You swallow back the urge to point out that in America, education is about comprehension, not rote memorization. Lady Ashford will arrive at 3. You just need to endure until then. The morning drags. You practice curtsies until your thighs ache, drill the names and titles of every potential guest at the Queen's garden party, and memorize which flowers are acceptable for which events. No lilies at weddings, no chrysanthemums in mixed company, never tulips. At lunch, Lady Harwick mentions Lady Ashford as though the name itself were distasteful. She's calling this afternoon. Yes, you reply carefully. Mrs. Finch arranged it. Harwick spreads butter across her bread with surgical precision. Catherine Ashford, another American, married Lord Ashford 5 years ago. A Boston girl, I believe. The way she utters Boston girl places it somewhere beneath scullery maid in her regard. Is there something wrong with Lady Ashford? You ask, worried. If Harwick disapproves, might Edward cancel the visit? Wrong? No. Harwick takes a measured bite. She's simply modern in her views. Lord Ashford indulges her more than tradition would advise. Modern sounds encouraging. Indulged even better. I'll be sure to maintain proper decorum during her visit, you promise. Harwick gives you a look of disbelief. See that you do. The Harwick name has stood for 800 years. You finish the line in your head, already knowing it by heart. By the time the clock nears 3, your anticipation is unbearable. Stevens dresses you in a pale blue silk reception gown, modest by American standards, though suitably formal for greeting nobility. You wait in the smaller drawing room, sitting stiffly on a centuries-old Harrington chair, the clocks ticking loud in the silence. Lady Ashford, Phelps announces, and your heart lifts. She enters like a breeze of fresh air. Tall, red-haired, her gown just daring enough to bend English convention. Her smile is warm, her eyes bright and discerning. Your Grace, she greets with a flawless curtsy. Thank you for receiving me. You rise, catching yourself just in time, offering your hand to be taken rather than shaking hers in the American way. Lady Ashford, I'm delighted you could come. The formalities complete, she casts a quick glance toward Phelps, who still lingers at the door. You choke back the instinct to argue that in America, education means grappling with ideas, not parroting facts by rote. But here, survival depends on silence. Lady Ashford will arrive at 3 o'clock. All you have to do is last until then. The hours crawl. You repeat your curtsy again and again until your thighs scream, holding the position until your knees threaten to buckle. You rattle through endless lists of names and titles. Dukes, duchesses, viscounts, marquesses, each attached to a family with centuries of history and power. Each name must be placed in the proper order, each face correctly remembered for the Queen's upcoming garden party. One mistake could mean disgrace. Then there are the flowers, pages of them. Lilies, too solemn, never at a wedding. Chrysanthemums, acceptable only in mourning, never in mixed company. Tulips, under no circumstances, for reasons Lady Harwick refuses to explain, though the way her lips pinch shut suggests scandal lurks behind the rule. You memorize them all, the details etching themselves into your aching mind. At luncheon, the air feels heavy, thick with unspoken judgments. Lady Harwick spreads butter across a piece of bread with exact surgical precision. Lady Ashford, she says, as though pronouncing a diagnosis. She is calling this afternoon. Yes, you answer, measuring your voice. Mrs. Finch arranged it. Harwick's knife moves in a smooth, disdainful arc. Catherine Ashford, another American. She married Lord Ashford 5 years ago. A Boston girl, I believe. The phrase Boston girl lands like an insult. In her tone, it carries less weight than scullery maid. You hesitate, then ask, is there something wrong with Lady Ashford? The concern slips through despite your best efforts. If Harwick disapproves, could she sway Edward against the meeting? Wrong, no. Harwick takes a delicate bite of bread, chewing slowly, deliberately. She is simply modern in her views. Lord Ashford permits her liberties a proper husband would not. Modern. The word stirs something like hope. Indulged sounds even better. Perhaps this visit will be a reprieve. I'll be sure to maintain proper decorum when she arrives, you say firmly. Harwick fixes you with a look that strips away any illusion she believes you. See that you do. The Harwick name has endured for 800 years. You mouth the familiar lines silently alongside her, already knowing every syllable. The afternoon builds like a held breath. By the time the clock nears 3, anticipation has your nerves stretched thin. Stevens dresses you with meticulous care in a reception gown of pale blue silk, modest compared to American fashion, yet formal enough to greet a visiting dignitary. He smooths every fold until the fabric gleams. You sit in the smaller drawing room, perched on the edge of a Harrington chair that has stood since before your country ever declared its independence. The clock on the mantel ticks with brutal volume, each second dragging, each moment reminding you that Lady Harwick's eyes are everywhere. Finally, Lady Ashford, Phelps announces from the doorway. Your heart jolts. She enters like sunlight through a shuttered room, tall, red-haired, her gown daringly cut just beyond the limits of English fashion. There's confidence in the set of her shoulders, in the glimmer of her eyes, in the unbothered sway of her stride. She brings with her the scent of fresh air, the suggestion of freedom. Your Grace, she says with a graceful curtsy, her smile warm yet sharp with intelligence. Thank you for receiving me. You rise quickly, almost forgetting the protocol drilled into you, catching yourself at the last moment and extending your hand for her to take, not clasping hers as you would back home. Lady Ashford, you reply, forcing your voice steady. I'm delighted you could come. The formalities performed, her gaze flicks to Phelps, still hovering in the doorway, as though silently dismissing him with the same confidence she's carried into the room. Tea, I think, and maybe a bit of privacy. Phelps looks taken aback for a second. English guests would never dismiss a butler so directly, but he quickly recovers. Of course, my lady, at once. When the door shuts, Lady Ashford's demeanor shifts. The rigid aristocratic mask softens, and before you sits simply a woman in her early 30s, faint laugh lines by her eyes and a warm conspiratorial smile. Well, she says, her Boston accent peeking through, another American thrown into the lion's den. How are you holding up, Duchess? The question, the accent, the sudden humanity, it all strikes you at once. To your horror, your eyes brim with tears. That bad, huh? Lady Ashford sits beside you, gently patting your hand. I cried every day for the first month, twice some days. My maid thought I was suffering from some mysterious illness. You choke out a laugh through your tears. Mine probably thinks the same. I'm sorry, I don't usually unravel in front of strangers. Of course not. You're American, we're practical folk. She passes you a dainty handkerchief from her reticule. But I'm not a stranger. I'm a fellow survivor of the Anglo-American marriage bargain. That word, survivor, gives you pause, gives you hope. How did you falter, unsure how to phrase it. Survive, she finishes smoothly, one day at a time, with friends, with support, and with the knowledge that for all their tradition and bluster, the English aristocracy needs us more than we need them. The tea arrives, granting you a moment to compose yourself. Once the servants leave, Catherine leans in. Tell me everything. The good, the dreadful, and especially the times you wanted to strangle someone with their own cravat. What follows is an hour unlike any you've had since crossing the Atlantic. Words tumble out. Confessions, frustrations, laughter. Catherine, call me Catherine, please, when it's just us, listens intently, laughs where you need laughter, and offers advice born of her own battles. When you mention Lady Harwick and her endless etiquette drills, Catherine rolls her eyes. That fossil? Useful if you want to understand ancient history, but hopeless with the present. She is knowledgeable, you hear yourself defend, though you've thought far harsher things in private. Oh, she knows which fork belongs to which course, and how to bow to a duchess of some obscure line. But does she know what it means to be a woman in 1895? To leave everything behind, sail into a hostile society that both craves your dowry and despises your presence? No, for that you need women who've lived it. Friends. That word burns inside you. Friends. Are there many of us? American women married into all this? More than you'd expect, and more each season. Catherine's eyes gleam. We even have a name, the Dollar Duchesses, though some of us are merely countesses or viscountesses. Dollar Duchess, you repeat, tasting the phrase. A little vulgar. Exactly the sort of thing that would make Lady Harwick faint dead away. We help each other, Catherine continues. Advice, support, warnings about which dukes to avoid when the champagne flows. And yes, we meet regularly, discreetly. Meet? You can't help the intrigue. It sounds like conspiracy. Wouldn't our husbands object? Catherine's smile sharpens. Our husbands are too wrapped up in clubs, politics, or mistresses to notice. We're just ladies sharing tea. What could be more proper? But her tone makes it clear. It's more than tea. There is purpose. A quiet rebellion stitched beneath the silk. She slips you a card with an address. Friday, 4 o'clock. Lady Winchester's on Park Lane. She's one of us. Married an earl, brought enough Chicago meatpacking money to resurrect a crumbling estate and erase decades of gambling debt. You slide the card into your sleeve, pulse quickening like you've been handed a secret code. I'll be there. Good. Catherine's expression sobers. And about the garden party, remember this. The Queen isn't what the whispers suggest. She's keener than people realize, and oddly fond of Americans. Respect her, but be yourself. She's endured enough simpering debutantes to last eternity. The clock chimes 4, startling you both. Catherine sighs and rises. I should go. These visiting hours are ridiculously rigid, but I'm glad we spoke. Charlotte, she says your first name with such ease it brings fresh tears. Thank you for everything. Welcome to the sisterhood, Duchess. Friday at 4. When she leaves, you remain in the drawing room, the card hidden in your sleeve, her words echoing, Dollar Duchesses, sisterhood. For the first time since arriving, you feel the faint warmth of hope. That hope carries into dinner, until Edward casually mentions you'll be attending Lady Dunoir's musical evening tomorrow. I thought the garden party wasn't until next week? You ask, fork frozen midair. It isn't. Tomorrow's just a rehearsal of sorts. Your first public appearance as Duchess of Harrington. Your first appearance. Your first chance to falter, to shame Edward, to stain the Harrington name that has stood unbroken for 8 centuries. How many people will be there? You ask, voice trembling despite yourself, 50 or 60, quite intimate by London standards. He sips his wine unconcerned. Not just any 50 or 60 guests, the very pinnacle of London society, several with direct ties to the Queen, assembled to watch, judge, and appraise the American Duchess for the slightest misstep. I see, you manage. Edward studies you across the table. Lady Harwick assures me you're sufficiently prepared. Sufficiently, like food cooked just long enough not to sicken, kills your appetite. I'll try not to shame you, you say, bitterness slipping through. It isn't about shame, Charlotte, Edward replies, almost gently. It's about fitting in. You're a Harrington now. Their opinion safeguards our standing, our future. Our, meaning the Harrington legacy, not you and him. I understand, you answer, because there's nothing else to say. That night, you stare up at the ceiling for hours, Catherine's counsel clashing with Lady Harwick's. Be genuine but proper, American but not too American, cultivate allies, yet obey the code. Tomorrow, London will get its first glimpse of the Duchess of Harrington, and you can't tell if they'll applaud or sneer. Lady Dunoir's music room is aristocratic excess incarnate. Gilded mirrors, silk-lined walls, and a Steinway that could buy a neighborhood. A murmur of polished English voices hums through the crowd. Women in evening gowns, men in flawless black and white. You hover at the doorway beside Edward, feeling like a specimen under glass as heads pivot to take in the American interloper who wed into an ancient house. Courage, Edward murmurs, barely audible, but the nearest he's come to kindness. What follows is a whirl of names, bows, curtsies, and carefully measured chatter. Lady Harwick's rules toll in your head. Wait to be addressed, don't sit before your superiors, avoid politics and religion. Across the room, the Duchess of Marlborough, Consuelo Vanderbilt, another American, offers a sympathetic glance but doesn't approach, occupied by admirers and her own performance. The American Duchess, a voice purrs behind you, making the title sound like an insult. How exotic! You turn to Lady Dunoir herself, formidable and 50-ish, wearing a smile that never reaches her eyes. You curtsy perfectly. Thank you for including me. How could I not? Everyone is dying to meet the woman who captured Harrington. Her gaze rakes over you, weighing and measuring. Though you're not what I expected, you keep your expression pleasant. And what did you expect, Lady Dunoir? The directness startles her. Catherine's advice, be authentic, bolsters you. She recovers. One hears things about American ladies, so forward, so modern. She says modern like it's contagious. I hope I won't disappoint, you reply, lightly ironic. A young man nearby suppresses a laugh. Lady Dunoir's eyes narrow before she drifts off to another target. Careful, the young man murmurs, stepping closer. She remembers everything and wields it like a knife. He's around 30, handsome in the classic English mold. Fair hair, blue eyes, aristocratic features honed by centuries. Lord James Winters, he says with a small bow. No title, sadly, just a younger son with better manners than prospects. His easy irreverence cuts through the pomp. Charlotte Harrington. You answer, then correct yourself. The Duchess of Harrington. Still acclimating to the style, his smile is kind, not mocking. New York to London is quite a leap. Have you spent time in New York? Hope flickers. Someone who might understand what you left behind. Several visits, he says. My brother, the Earl, land-rich, sense-poor, sent me to check American investments. He lowers his voice. I suspect he hoped I'd bring back an heiress, pal. I returned with contracts and a taste for real cocktails. You laugh. Unexpected after days of careful restraint. New York does know its cocktails. A scandal what passes for a drink here, he agrees. Though there's a spot near Covent Garden that manages a respectable Manhattan. Charlotte. Edward's voice cleaves the conversation as he appears at your elbow. I see you've met Lord James. The temperature of his tone has dropped. You realize you've been talking and laughing for minutes while Edward was elsewhere. Is a duchess meant to remain decorative and silent until summoned? We were discussing New York, you say. Indeed. Edward's face gives nothing away. The Countess of Warwick asked for you. We mustn't keep her waiting. It's a dismissal of both the conversation and Lord James. He bows smoothly. A pleasure, Your Grace. Perhaps we'll resume our debate over American spirits another time. As Edward guides you away, his grip firm, he adds quietly, Lord James has a particular fondness for American women. Best to keep your distance. The meaning is plain. Flirt, libertine, unsuitable company for a Harrington Duchess. The rebuke stings. You weren't flirting, just enjoying a normal exchange with someone who didn't treat you like a curiosity or a walking dowry. The Countess of Warwick reveals herself as yet another imposing matron of the aristocracy, upright, polished, with eyes that weigh and measure you before a word is spoken. Conversation with her feels rigid, rehearsed, full of references to people and histories you cannot follow. You hold your smile until your cheeks ache, laugh politely at humor that misses its mark, and cling desperately to the drills Lady Harwick hammered into you. When the evening shifts to music, a soprano launches into Italian arias, her voice soaring and precise. You sit between Edward and an elderly duke who succumbs to slumber before the first piece concludes. The melodies wash over you, lovely, yes, but strangely distant, just like this entire new existence. Your eyes drift around the glittering hall, gowns shimmering with silk, hair arranged with painstaking care, jewels sparkling like fortunes around throats and wrists. These are said to be your peers now, yet you have never felt more alien. Across the room, Lord James meets your gaze and offers the faintest smile of sympathy. You remember Edward's warning and quickly look away, but the moment lingers, a quiet reminder that not every face here sees you as an interloper. The soprano concludes to polite applause. Tea and delicate cakes arrive, followed by more introductions and carefully measured exchanges. You play your part smoothly, perhaps even flawlessly, at least without visible error. Edward appears satisfied enough by the time the carriage comes to collect you. The ride home feels heavy, your body and mind worn down by hours of vigilance. Every gesture, every word tonight was weighed against the invisible scale of Harrington expectations. You did well, Edward remarks at last as the carriage rattles away from Lady Dunor's residence. It is the nearest thing to praise he has given you. Thank you, you answer, though exhaustion smothers any sense of triumph. Half ironically, you ask, "So I integrated successfully?" His glance sharpens. The Countess of Warwick found you charming. Lady Pembroke has invited us to dinner. Lady Dunor was less impressed, but her opinion no longer matters as much. By the ledger of London society, this was a triumph. Yet triumph feels hollow. You are only tired. And then, against your better judgment, you ask, "And Lord James? Did I fail in speaking with him?" Edward's jaw stiffens. James Winters is personable, well-connected, but his reputation with women, especially American women, is less than spotless. You murmur that you understand. Looking out into the dim streets of London, you add softly, "I wasn't flirting with him, if that's what concerns you." Edward's reply is cool. "I am concerned with appearances, Charlotte. A young, beautiful duchess draws attention, some of it useful, some dangerous. You must be careful." Beautiful. The word startles you. It is the first time Edward has acknowledged your looks, and it unsettles you more than his disapproval ever did. You study him in the flickering carriage light, handsome in a severe English way, a face carved with discipline, not warmth, a jaw unyielding, eyes that could soften if they ever chose. "I'll be more careful," you promise, though you're not sure whether you mean it. Home awaits. Stevens meets you at the door, deftly removing the diamonds from your hair, peeling away the layers of fabric that transform you into Duchess, returning you to Charlotte the woman. The ritual grows familiar, though never comfortable. Alone in your vast bed, your thoughts wander back to the night, the searching stares, the practiced conversations, the fleeting spark of connection with Lord James. You think, too, of Catherine and her quiet alliance of dollar duchesses, of the gathering that looms on Friday. The Queen herself waits at the garden party next week. Another trial, another judgment. Your world feels both enlarged and confined. From the restless freedom of New York streets, you have been transported into this glittering cage where every move is cataloged, every word weighed against centuries of expectation. Yet beneath silks and diamonds, beneath the polished mask, you remain Charlotte Miller of Fifth Avenue. Tonight, you endured. You secured invitations, impressed Lady Warwick, left an impression on James Winters, and most crucially, inched closer to Catherine Ashford's secret sisterhood. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. And so, sleep comes easier this time. Dreams carry you to Friday afternoons, whispered alliances, and a faint glimmer of a future where you might carve out meaning or perhaps even happiness in the life you have been bartered into. Tomorrow, the lessons resume. Tomorrow, Lady Harwick awaits. The following day brings yet another dinner, another night of stiff conversation and silent judgment, where your value is weighed in the tilt of your vowels, the precision of your manners, and how convincingly you perform the role of Duchess. But beneath the weight of expectation, you hold on to one thought. Friday. Friday means Catherine and the Dollar Duchesses, and for the first time since stepping foot in England, you feel something like anticipation. The days leading up to it blur together, a tedious parade of lessons, formal gatherings, and endless corrections. Lady Harwick continues her relentless drilling, teaching you how to hold a teacup so the liquid never rises above 3/4, how to walk at just the right pace depending on the rank of the person before you. 3 steps behind royalty, 2 behind a duke, 1 behind an earl or marquess. You nod, memorize, repeat, outwardly compliant, inwardly restless. Each correction is another brick in the wall rising around you, a cage disguised as etiquette. But now you have a secret. Catherine's gathering, a crack in the wall. Edward is preoccupied with estate affairs, present only at dinner where he asks about your lessons or informs you of the next event you must attend. He seems pleased enough with your performance at Lady Dunor's musical evening, though he has not spoken Lord James's name since. One morning at breakfast, you gather your courage. I've received an invitation to take tea with Lady Winchester, you say, making your voice sound casual. On Park Lane, I thought I might accept. Edward lowers his paper just long enough to consider. Winchester, he says slowly. Chicago money, if I remember. Yes, her husband is the Earl. He studies you, then nods. They're well connected despite their recent elevation. A useful acquaintance. Useful, that's the word. As if 3 centuries of nobility makes them barely respectable. You force a smile. Then I have your permission? The request tastes bitter, but you swallow it. Of course. Take the carriage. Be back by 6. We dine with the Pembrokes tonight. Another dinner. Another performance. But today it hardly matters. Lady Winchester's mansion is everything Harrington House pretends not to be. Loud, glittering, unapologetically new. A limestone palace, dripping with columns, balconies, and more windows than you can count. It screams of American wealth grafted onto English titles. Inside, footmen in heavy livery usher you through a marble hall where a chandelier big enough to crush a carriage swings overhead. Her Grace, the Duchess of Harrington, the butler announces, and you enter a drawing room larger than most ballrooms. They're waiting, 7 women, perfectly dressed, their jewels catching the light, their eyes appraising. Some curious, some sympathetic, some assessing like jewelers examining a stone. Catherine rises first. Charlotte, I'm so glad you came. The sound of your first name is a balm, a reminder that you are not just a duchess, you are still you. Then comes Lady Winchester herself, Emma, striking, blonde, laughing as she greets you. Welcome to the American Embassy. The others laugh with her, and you realize this is a long-standing joke. Please, call me Charlotte, you say, and the simple request feels like slipping free of a too heavy cloak. Names are exchanged. Margaret of Pittsburgh Steel, Louisa of San Francisco Shipping, Pamela of Boston Banking, Clara of Philadelphia Real Estate, Sarah of New York Finance. Each woman carries her own empire across the Atlantic, each one transformed into an English title in exchange for her fortune. You sit, a porcelain cup pressed into your hands, and the questions rain down. How are you settling? Has Lady Harwick driven you to madness? How dreadful is your mother-in-law? Have you met the Queen yet? The barrage is overwhelming, but it's the kind of overwhelming that feels like relief. For the first time, people aren't mocking you or correcting you. They're sharing in your struggle. Catherine finally interrupts with a smile. Ladies, don't terrify her. Charlotte's only been in London for a week. A week? Sarah gasps. Oh, darling, you're still in the what have I done stage. When does that stage end? You ask, half joking. They exchange looks. It doesn't, Emma admits. It changes. Louisa calls it resignation. Margaret says adaptation. Clara smiles wickedly. Strategy. Stories spill forth. Emma's husband gambled away half her fortune until she seized control of the accounts. Margaret's mother-in-law tried to exile her when she didn't produce an heir in the first year. Louisa discovered her husband had a secret family in Scotland. Clara leans in, blunt. They need our money, but they resent us for it, especially for reminding them how badly they need it. Catherine softens the words. Not everyone resents us. Some of the younger generation are different, more accepting. Lord James Winters, for instance. Pamela smirks. Quite attentive at Lady Dunor's, wasn't he? Heat rises in your cheeks. We only spoke of New York, you protest. Catherine's gaze is kind. James treats us as equals, not as walking dowries. Emma laughs. That's why the others warn their wives away from him. He encourages independence. He tells us to keep money in our own names, to demand a say in how it's used. Radical, isn't it? The notion that we might manage our own fortunes. Something sharp twists in your chest. You'd never even considered such a possibility. Your dowry, $2.5 million in railroad stock, was transferred straight to Edward. His to command. His to control. Is it possible, you ask quietly, to keep control? Clara doesn't hesitate. Not just possible. Essential. My husband nearly bankrupted us in a year. I threatened to return to Philadelphia and cut off his funds. He changed overnight. I still manage the accounts. He gets an allowance like a schoolboy. It wounds his pride, but better that than ruin. The thought of Edward with an allowance is almost laughable. A duke reduced to asking for spending money. And yet you realize you don't even know the state of Harrington finances. You've seen household accounts, but never the ledgers of the estate. Catherine's voice cuts through your thoughts. That's your first task, Charlotte. Learn where your money goes. Knowledge is power. The conversation turns to gossip. The Queen's upcoming garden party, the scandals of the Prince of Wales, the fluttering pulse of London society, but you can barely follow. Your mind loops back to ledgers, to accounts, to the faint but danger promise of agency. As the gathering ends, Emma touches your arm. We meet every Friday, sometimes here, sometimes with Catherine, sometimes at Broughton House when Sarah's husband is off in Paris, which is often. Sarah snorts. He finds Paris more entertaining than I am. Catherine asks the question softly, but her eyes are sharp. Will you join us again? Yes, you say instantly. Yes, very much. The carriage carries you back to Harrington House, your thoughts racing. These women have carved out survival in gilded cages, built a secret sisterhood in the cracks of tradition. For the first time, you can imagine a future that is more than endurance, a future where you might wield a voice, maybe even purpose. But to begin, you need knowledge. You need to know what Edward has done with your father's millions. Dinner with the Pembrokes drifts by in a haze, your Duchess mask firmly in place. You smile when you should, laugh politely, exchange pleasantries, but your thoughts are elsewhere. Back home, Edward retreats to his study with his brandy and cigars. You should go upstairs, let Stephen strip away your diamonds, and put you to bed. Instead, you linger in the hall outside his study door, pulse quickening. Finally, you knock. Enter, his voice calls, surprised, because no one interrupts the Duke in his sanctuary. You slip inside, drawn into a room that smells of smoke and leather, like paneled in dark wood, lined with books that look as if they've been read, not displayed. Edward looks up from his desk, brow furrowed. Charlotte, is something wrong? You cross the carpet, your skirts whispering as you sit opposite him. No, you say carefully. I only wanted to ask you something. That evening, you realize how little you truly know of Harrington's vast estates, their finances, their management, the machinery that sustains the dukedom. In America, your father would speak openly of railroads, stocks, investments, even risks, with both you and your mother. It had been an education as much as a conversation. Here, when you raise the subject, Edward's brows lift ever so slightly. Business matters are not considered fit for ladies, he says with cool authority. Perhaps not in England, you answer evenly, but I find myself curious how our wealth is being used. The slip, our wealth, lands between you like a stone. Edward's jaw tightens, his voice sharpening. Your father's settlement was generous. It has been put to good use, I assure you. I don't doubt it, you reply lightly, masking the edge beneath your tone. But as Duchess, shouldn't I at least have some understanding of the estates I am meant to represent? His eyes harden. The estate manager and I oversee those affairs. Lady Harwick instructs you in your own domain, household management. That is more than sufficient. You think of Clara running her husband's lands with ruthless efficiency, of Emma guarding the Winchester coffers, of Catherine who speaks of strategy as survival. I see, you murmur, rising from your chair. I only thought a broader view might be helpful, but of course you know best. The faintest irony laces your words. Edward notices. His gaze sharpens. You seem changed tonight, Charlotte. Has something happened? Your thoughts flash to the afternoon in Catherine's drawing room, the sound of laughter, the freedom of being Charlotte rather than her Grace. Not at all, you say smoothly. I only wish to fulfill my role as Duchess as completely as possible. He studies you, measuring. At last he inclines his head. A commendable aim. Perhaps once you're more settled, we can speak of broader matters. For now, focus on your presentation to the Queen. That is paramount. A dismissal, gentle yet firm, but not final. Not a refusal either. You bow your head. Of course. Good night, Edward. Good night, Charlotte. You leave his study with your heart strangely alight. He had not granted you access, but he had not forbidden it either. More importantly, you had asked. You had pushed past obedience toward desire. It is only a step, but a step nonetheless. Upstairs, Stevens unpins your jewels as you catch sight of yourself in the mirror. Same gown, same face, yet your eyes are different, sharper, alive with a spark that was not there before. The garden party looms, the Queen's judgment a specter on the horizon. Yet instead of dread, you feel a surge of resolve. You will not stand before Her Majesty as only the Duchess of Harrington. You will stand as Charlotte, a woman carving a path in a world that would rather silence her. Sleep claims you easily that night, filled with flickering dreams of ledgers and sisterhoods, of a future not chained to fortune, but defined by choice. The next morning, an unexpected shift arrives at breakfast. Edward sets aside his coffee cup. I must go down to Harrington Park, he announces. Tenant troubles. I'll be gone 2 days. You'll remain here. Lady Harwick still has much to prepare you for Tuesday. 2 days. 2 days without his watchful eyes. You incline your head, hiding the quickening of your pulse. Of course. By mid-morning, he is gone. The house breathes differently in his absence, lighter, less stifling. You endure Lady Harwick's lessons with unusual patience, every correction and lecture dulled by the knowledge that freedom waits. When she finally departs, you waste no time. Stevens, you say calmly once back in your chambers, I'll be reviewing some correspondence in His Grace's study this afternoon. I'm not to be disturbed unless it is urgent. Her brows rise in surprise, but she bows. Yes, Your Grace. The study feels altered without him, still masculine, still severe, but lacking its usual intimidation. You move slowly through the space, noticing details overlooked before. Photographs in silver frames, a row of medals, the great map marking Harrington lands across 3 counties. Your gaze drifts inevitably to the desk. You hesitate. Searching your husband's desk borders on betrayal. But then what trust anchors a marriage born from money and convenience? Edward has never feigned affection, only necessity. Decision made, you test the drawers. Pens, paper, sealing wax. Nothing of weight until the bottom drawer, locked. Of course. You scan the room, hunting for a key until your eyes land on a Shakespeare volume set carelessly aside. A ribbon marks a page. Edward reading Shakespeare, you open it. Henry Fife. Nestled against the binding, small, brass, unmistakable. Your pulse quickens. You slip the key into the lock. A click. The drawer slides open, revealing leather-bound ledgers, heavy with secrets. Hands trembling, you lift the first one to the desk. Columns of figures stretch across the pages. At first, the numbers blur, but your father had trained you well. Never trust anyone else with your money, he had said, especially not your husband. Gradually, the meaning crystallizes. The Harrington estates had not simply been struggling before your marriage, they had been collapsing. Mortgages stacked upon mortgages, loans with ruinous interest, gambling debts, failed ventures. Then, after your wedding, a miraculous revival. Debts vanished, mortgages cleared, investments replenished, all bought with your father's millions. But the current accounts chill you more. The money pours out as quickly as it had come in. New loans, new losses. And always a recurring payment, large sums each month delivered to an address in Chelsea. Marked only L. At this pace, even your immense dowry will bleed away within 5 years. And then? What remains for the Duchess of Harrington when the gold is gone? The sound of the front door slams your heart into your throat. Voices, Edward's among them. He's returned early. You shove the ledgers back into the drawer, lock it, restore the key to its place, barely sinking into the chair before the door opens. Edward halts, surprise flickering into suspicion. Charlotte, what are you doing here? Your mind races. You force a calm smile. Looking for something to read. Lady Harwick suggested I learn more of English history. I thought perhaps your shelves might provide. His gaze sweeps the room, then returns to you. Does he believe it? You cannot tell. I hadn't expected to return so soon, he says after a moment. The trouble at Harrington Park was minor. I'll attend the garden party after all. Wonderful, you manage, heart pounding. I'm glad you'll be there. You move to leave, but he steps into your path, his eyes searching yours. Are you well, Charlotte? You seem flushed. A slight headache. You lie smoothly, pulse still racing. I thought reading might help distract me. His hand lifts, brushing your forehead, whether in care or calculation, you cannot tell. You don't feel feverish. Perhaps you should rest before dinner. Yes, I think I will. Excuse me. He steps aside to let you pass, but you feel his gaze burning between your shoulders as you leave, measuring, questioning. In your room, you sink onto the bed, thoughts racing. The Harrington finances are fragile despite your dowry. The secret payments to L, the alarming speed with which your father's fortune is draining away. Knowledge is power, Catherine had said, and now you have knowledge. But what will you do with it? You think of the dollar duchesses, each finding her own path. Clara seizing control of her husband's accounts. Emma threatening to cut off American funds. Catherine weaving strategy into independence. And then you remind yourself, you're not merely a duchess bought with dollars. You are Charlotte Miller of New York. Your father taught you business, finance, survival. Beneath the silks and titles, that woman is still there. The garden party looms only days away. The queen herself waits to pass judgment, yet now the stakes feel sharper. This is no longer about social triumphs, it is survival. The Harrington name may boast 8 centuries of glory, but without your fortune, it will crumble. And if Edward is burning through your dowry at this pace, what safety remains for you when your worth runs dry? What shield protects a duchess once her wealth is spent? These questions whirl inside you as you force yourself to smile, to converse, to pretend. Outwardly, nothing has changed, but within, everything has. You have glimpsed the truth behind aristocratic grandeur, desperation disguised as splendor. Like the duchesses before you, you must wield this knowledge to carve your own footing in this glittering yet perilous world. The morning of the garden party arrives bright and clear, as if even the English skies dare not slight the queen. Sleep has eluded you, haunted by accounts and questions. Who is L? Why is Edward draining your dowry so recklessly? And what can you possibly do about it? But today belongs not to uncertainty, it belongs to Queen Victoria. Preparation begins hours in advance. Stevens and her assistants flutter about, washing, powdering, lacing, arranging. The gown, cream silk with fine embroidery, elegant and modest, is lowered carefully onto your frame. Your hair is twisted until it aches, set with pearl combs worn once by a long-dead Harrington duchess. You look beautiful, Your Grace, Stevens says softly. In the mirror, a stranger returns your gaze. Polished, poised, perfect. No hint of yesterday's discoveries, no crack in the facade. A duchess, not Charlotte Miller. Edward appears in the doorway, crisp in morning dress. His expression unreadable, his verdict curt. Satisfactory. You've learned that's praise enough. The carriage is waiting. On the way to Buckingham Palace, he recites protocol again, as though you hadn't endured Lady Harwick's relentless drilling. Your Majesty for the first address. Ma'am thereafter. Curtsy deeply, but not excessively. Speak when spoken to. Keep it brief, deferential. I remember, you say tightly, swallowing the urge to snap that you are neither child nor fool. I won't embarrass you. This isn't about embarrassment, Charlotte, he corrects, his tone cool. It's about securing the Harrington legacy. You finish the sentence silently, while he squanders my father's millions. The procession of carriages snakes toward the palace, a parade of finery vying for one woman's approval. Footmen guide you into sprawling gardens alive with music and ceremony. The crowd is perfectly arranged. Aristocracy, politicians, diplomats, each cluster signposting rank and influence. Somewhere within it, the Queen herself. Edward guides you with calculated efficiency, offering nods, clipped words, never lingering. You glimpse Lady Dunor's disapproval, Lady Warwick's polite smile, Lord Wexford's whiskers, and then James Winters, radiant in the sunlight, bowing with grace, your Grace, radiant as always. Before you can answer, Edward's grip hardens on your arm. James, unexpected. My brother was indisposed. James replies smoothly. I had the privilege of representing us, though, his eyes glint, It hardly feels like misfortune. The words linger, warm, dangerous. Edward's jaw clenches. Excuse us. I hope to speak with you later, Your Grace, James says, bowing again. Edward leads you on, bristling. That man is becoming intolerable. You recall Catherine's words, that James urged American wives to guard their independence. No wonder Edward resents him. He was being polite, you say evenly. He was being familiar, Edward retorts, and you encouraged him. I hardly said a word. It isn't words, Charlotte. It's how you look at him. The sting is sharp because it isn't wholly false. James's humor, his lack of pretense, it is refreshing. But Edward's accusation burns unfairly. Before you can respond, the crowd shifts, a hush sweeping the garden. There she is, small, round, draped in black, yet commanding every gaze. Queen Victoria. Edward's hand tightens. Come, she is receiving now. Your pulse hammers as you approach. There's a faint note in her voice. Irony, maybe even amusement, that catches you off guard. Could the Queen already know of Edward's precarious finances? Of how your dowry had been the very lifeline for the Harrington estate? We are working toward modernization, Your Majesty, Edward answers smoothly, his tone practiced. But the Queen's gaze shifts to you. And you, Duchess? Are you modernizing as well? Or has England claimed you already? The question feels like a trial, one with no clear path to success. Catherine's advice echoes in your mind, respectful but authentic. I am learning England's ways, ma'am, you reply cautiously, while trying not to lose America's virtues. Something flickers in the Queen's eyes, perhaps amusement, perhaps approval. A diplomatic answer, she says. We shall watch your progress with interest, Duchess of Harrington. With that, the audience ends. A nod dismisses you. You curtsy, Edward bows, and together you retreat the required number of steps before turning away. Well, you whisper once out of earshot. How did I do? She spoke to you longer than most, Edward says thoughtfully, and she seemed intrigued. Is that good? It isn't bad, he admits. His glance drifts back toward the royal enclosure. The Queen wastes no time on those who bore her. For the next hour, you drift through the gardens, now officially recognized, officially presentable to society's highest tier. Faces that once overlooked you now beam with welcome. Women who once dismissed you now extend invitations. Edward collects these victories quietly, like a general tallying the success of his campaign. You play your role with precision, gracious, modest, American enough to be novel, but never so brash as to be vulgar. And yet, beneath the mask of composure, your thoughts circle back to ledgers, to unexplained payments, to the looming question of what happens when the money is gone. The crowd parts, and suddenly Lord James stands beside you again. Edward, caught in discussion with a minister a few steps away, has left you momentarily unguarded. The Queen was impressed, Lord James remarks without preamble. I could tell from across the lawn. You were watching me? The words slip out more flirtatiously than you intend. Among others, he answers with a smile. But you are by far the most interesting here, Duchess. Because I'm American? Because you observe. You listen more than you speak. That is rare anywhere. His remark strikes you. You hadn't named your caution, your careful navigation of these foreign rules, as observation. But he is right. You have been watching, measuring, weighing since the moment you stepped onto English soil. My father taught me, you confess. In business, the one who listens most learns most. A wise man. Lord James's expression sobers. I hear you've made Lady Winchester's acquaintance in her circle. Your heart quickens. How does he know about the dollar duchesses? Yes, you say evenly. I called on her last week. They're intelligent, capable women. His voice drops, deliberate and low. Women who've learned to shield themselves in a society that sees them only as vessels of wealth. He knows. He understands. Why are you telling me this? You ask, suspicion threading your tone. Is this some kind of test? I've seen what happens to American brides who lack allies, he says. His blue eyes hold yours with unsettling steadiness. My sister-in-law Helen was fortunate. Many others are not. Before you can answer, Edward materializes, his face carved in ice as he takes in the sight of you and Lord James. Charlotte, he says, his voice tight. Lady Pembroke requests your presence. Lord James bows, withdrawing, but not before giving you a look laden with warning. Be careful, his eyes say. The rest of the garden party dissolves into a blur, names, faces, courtesies, all while his unspoken caution echoes in your mind. Edward doesn't let go of your arm, his grip steady, almost possessive, as if you might slip away without his permission. The glow of your presentation before the Queen, what should have been a triumph, feels dim under the weight of his displeasure. Inside the carriage, the silence is suffocating, heavy with words unspoken. When he finally breaks it, his voice is sharp, deliberate. I warned you about Lord James. You meet his cold tone with protest. We were only talking, in public, in front of the Queen herself. This isn't about appearances, Charlotte. It's about loyalty. The word stings, loyalty, as though this union were built on anything beyond money and convenience, dressed up in titles and obligations. Your reply slips out, laced with danger. Loyalty? Like the loyalty you show me? His head snaps toward you, suspicion blazing. What does that mean? You almost speak of the debts, the missing money, the rapid draining of your dowry. You almost bring up the whispered rumors, the letter signed with only an L. But you stop yourself. He's already angry, and you need more than instinct before making such accusations. So you draw in a shallow breath, masking your resolve with wariness. Nothing. I'm tired, that's all. He studies you for a long, piercing moment, clearly unconvinced, but he lets it drop. Yes, a long day, but successful. The Queen's attention is no small victory. Always calculating. Always weighing outcomes and advantages, never simply being. When you reach the house, you plead fatigue and withdraw to your chambers. In truth, you crave silence to think. Your presentation has shifted everything. You've been seen, approved, legitimized. But with that approval has come new threats, Edward's suspicion, Lord James's cryptic warning, and the shadow of your dwindling fortune. Tomorrow you'll meet with the other dollar duchesses again, and this time you'll need more than gossip. You'll need their knowledge, their strategies for survival. Because here, a duchess's value lasts only as long as her wealth. When the money runs out, what's left? Sleep doesn't come easily. Questions circle in your head, refusing to settle. By morning, your path is clearer. You cannot confront Edward blind. First, you need to know everything. At breakfast, Edward is all smiles, yesterday's tension seemingly forgotten. He talks eagerly of the garden party's results, the invitations already arriving, the doors opening. The Queen's interest has earned us favor. We've been invited to Chadsworth. The Devons themselves have extended it. A remarkable victory. You smile where you must, nodding on cue, though inside you feel less like a wife than a chess piece, shifted and sacrificed according to someone else's strategy. When is it? You ask lightly, as though the question itself is harmless. Next month after your presentation at court, another step forward. Of course, you answer, voice practiced, pleasant, obedient. Afterward, he departs for his club, his evening already promised to politics that don't require a wife's company. Convenient. His absence grants you freedom, the afternoon with the Jesses, the evening to dig further into truths he'd rather you never see. The gathering at Catherine's this time is different. Less about pleasantries, more about purpose. You're greeted warmly, congratulated on your success before the Queen. She spoke with me at length, you share carefully, and seemed almost intrigued that I was American. That's no small thing, Sarah, Duchess of Broughton, tells you with certainty. Her Majesty has a fondness for Americans despite what the old guard pretends. That interest gives you immunity. Immunity, you ask. Social immunity, Clara explains, sipping her tea. With the Queen's favor, even the most obstinate snobs will be forced to accept you, at least in public. Even Lady Dunor, Emma adds with a smirk, laughter rippling through the room. You laugh too, but your mind is elsewhere, weighing the timing. You didn't come here for reassurance. You came for answers, for guidance on how these women protect themselves, their wealth, their futures. And as the chatter drifts around you, you prepare to ask the question that could change everything. At last, during a quiet moment, you steady yourself and speak. I need to ask you something, delicate. The shift in the room is immediate. Every gaze sharpens, every fan and teacup stills. It's about finances. Catherine's lips curve knowingly. The most delicate subject of all. You hesitate, then push past the shame. I've discovered that my husband has been mishandling my dowry, badly, and there are monthly payments going out to someone signed only as L. The silence that follows is heavy, full of unspoken understanding. The women exchange glances, quick flashes of meaning passing between them. How did you find out? Clara finally asks. I looked in his study, his private ledgers. A flush creeps into your cheeks. I know it was wrong, but wrong? Clara cuts in with a laugh, sharp and unsympathetic. My dear, that's survival. The only wrong would be doing nothing while your fortune vanishes. Several heads nod in agreement. The payments, Margaret presses gently. How much? Large sums every month, to an address in Chelsea. Another ripple of exchanged glances. A mistress, Louisa says without hesitation. Almost certainly. The word strikes hard, though you'd suspect it. A mistress. He supports another woman with your money, while daring to lecture you on loyalty. I'm sorry, Charlotte, Catherine murmurs, reaching for your hand. It's more common than you'd like to think. Many English lords view marriage as a contract for wealth, not fidelity. And they expect us, Clara adds bitterly, to remain flawless while they indulge wherever they please. The unfairness burns, tightening your chest. What can I do? That depends, Emma replies carefully. Do you want to stop the payments, confront him, or protect yourself regardless of what he does? The truth forces itself forward. I want to safeguard what's left of my money before it's all gone. Approval gleams in their eyes. Good, Clara says firmly. That's practical. Tears and confrontations only weaken us. You have choices, Catherine assures you. Legal avenues, financial ones, but you'll need help. My husband's solicitor. No. The chorus of voices is immediate, unanimous. Sarah leans forward. Never trust your husband's solicitor. His loyalty is to the estate and to him, never to you. You need your own counsel, Catherine says. Someone loyal only to you. I know someone, a man's voice interrupts. You whip around, startled. In the doorway stands Lord James Winters. James, Catherine greets smoothly. We didn't expect you until later. My business concluded sooner than expected. His eyes meet yours, steady and direct. I hope I'm not intruding. Not at all, Emma replies lightly. Charlotte was just asking about financial protection. Your specialty, isn't it? He steps inside, closing the door behind him, and the women make space as though his presence is natural. He isn't simply tolerated, he's trusted, an ally. The Duchess has uncovered troubling activity, Catherine explains. James's expression hardens. I suspected as much. Harrington's gambling losses are no secret, nor the house in Chelsea. So it's common knowledge. Your humiliation burns hotter, but you press on. You mentioned a solicitor? Yes, George Bennett. He specializes in securing American wives' interests. He can establish an account your husband cannot touch, even set aside part of your dowry beyond his reach. Is that legal? With the right papers, yes, especially while you remain an American citizen. Hope surges in you, a fragile, dangerous thing, a path toward independence beyond Edward's control. There would be consequences, James warns softly. He won't forgive such a move. He's already draining every penny I brought into this marriage, you reply, voice cutting sharper than you expected. And now I find he keeps a mistress with my money. What more is there for him to take? The silence that follows is thick. Then Clara laughs, a bark of approval. I said she had steel. She'll manage. For the next hour, plans take shape. James will arrange the meeting with Bennett. Catherine and Emma will accompany you, disguising the errand beneath the appearance of shopping. Clara coaches you on the right questions to ask, the protections to demand. By the time you rise to leave, you have more than hope. You have a strategy. For the first time in England, you feel a measure of real power, not borrowed from Edward's title or society's approval, but your own. That night, you hear Edward's late return. His footsteps are uneven, his hand unsteady on the door to your room. You feign sleep as he peers in, the hall light spilling across your bed. After a pause, he closes the door and retreats down the hall. Tomorrow, you'll act. Tomorrow, the plan begins. But tonight, you rest, comforted by the knowledge that you are no longer navigating this treacherous world alone. And when morning comes, he studies you over breakfast, weary and bloodshot. You seem different today, he remarks slowly. You smile, calm and poised. Do I? Perhaps it's the success of the garden party. As you said, the Queen's approval changes everything. He accepts the explanation, but suspicion lingers in his gaze. You butter your toast with steady hands, concealing the truth that now burns within you. You are keeping secrets, forging alliances, and shaping a future that belongs to you. Very well, he finally relents. though not without a warning. Just try to keep some restraint. The bills from Madame Beaumont have been excessive. You hold your tongue. They're nothing compared to his gambling debts or the money he pours into that mysterious L. But you only nod, feigning compliance. When he departs for his club, the silence he leaves behind is heavy. Anger simmers at his hypocrisy, yet beneath it is a sharper resolve, a determination to safeguard what is yours. And faintly, an ache lingers for the marriage that might have been if the world had dealt you both different cards. But there's no room for wistful regrets now. You have an appointment, a plan, and a new sense of direction. You are no longer only the Duchess of Harrington. You are Charlotte Miller. The game has shifted. You are no longer a pawn maneuvered by others, but a player setting the board. The Queen's acceptance may have bought you status, but the Dollar Duchesses have offered something richer, a path to independence in a society built to keep women bound. That is the true treasure, worth more than jewels, more even than a coronet, measured not in gold, but in American dollars. Your dollars, the fortune you carried into this union, and the portion you now intend to protect with unflinching resolve. The solicitor's office is discreet, tucked away above a quiet street near Lincoln's Inn Fields. No gleaming marble, no grand sign, just a modest brass plate at the door and an air of serious, guarded business. Catherine and Emma walk at your side as you ascend the narrow staircase, the picture of three ladies returning from a day's shopping. The hat boxes and parcels, purchased in haste at Liberty's, complete the illusion. Inside, George Bennett rises to greet you. He is younger than expected, perhaps 40, spectacles perched neatly on his nose, his sharp gaze tempered with efficiency. "Your Grace," he says with a slight bow. "Lady Ashford, Lady Winchester, please sit." The office is plain but orderly, lined with shelves of law books, filing cabinets, and a desk stacked with tidy piles of papers. No unnecessary flourish, just the tools of his trade. "Lord Winters has provided me with a general outline of your concerns," Bennett begins once you are seated. "But to advise you properly, I'll need details." You hesitate, but Catherine gives the smallest nod, and Emma reaches over to squeeze your hand. Their quiet strength steadies you. With a breath you begin, explaining the dowry, the ledgers, the alarming expenditures, and those mysterious payments signed simply L. Bennett listens without interruption, jotting notes in a brisk hand, his face unreadable. When at last you finish, he leans back slightly. "It's not unusual, unfortunately. The law favors husbands in financial matters. Still, there are avenues to protect yourself, particularly for American wives." Your heart quickens. "What sort of avenues?" "That depends," he replies carefully. Bennett nods, as though your answer is exactly what he anticipated. "Then what we're really discussing is financial protection, setting aside part of your wealth so it remains beyond your husband's reach. A safety net should things take a turn." Your mind immediately flashes to the ledgers, the shrinking accounts, and the monthly payments to the enigmatic L in Chelsea. "Yes," you say firmly, "that's precisely what I want." "Good, direct, practical." Bennett adjusts his spectacles and begins outlining the possibilities. What follows feels like a lesson in survival, financial survival. He explains the legal tools at your disposal: separate accounts with American banks, investments held solely in your name, trusts to safeguard a portion of your assets for future children while still allowing you access to the income. "Your father's settlement," he asks, "was it a lump sum or phased payments?" "A lump sum," you reply, "railroad stock transferred directly to Edward at the time of our marriage." Bennett frowns slightly. "Less flexible than phased payments, but workable. Do you still maintain ties with banks in New York?" "Yes, my father's bank, Merchants and Trading." "Excellent. We'll liaise with their London correspondent and move funds gradually from the Harrington accounts, slowly so as not to arouse suspicion." He notes briskly, then adds, "You'll need access to at least one of the household passbooks. Is that possible?" Your mind flicks to Edward's study, the locked drawer, the key hidden in Shakespeare. "Yes," you say quietly, "I can manage it." Catherine and Emma exchange glances, a mix of concern and admiration. "Also," Bennett continues, "secure your personal jewels and other valuables, not in Harrington House, but in a bank deposit box under your own name. Portable assets matter most if circumstances require." A sudden departure. The implication chills you. Do you believe that's likely? In my experience, Bennett says evenly, husbands react very differently when confronted with a wife's independence. It's wise to prepare for every possibility. You look to Catherine and Emma. Both nod gravely. I've seen everything, Emma says softly. From grudging acceptance to outright violence. The Earl of Winchester tried to have me committed when I cut off his access to my Chicago funds. You stare at her, horrified. What happened? A faint wry smile touches Emma's lips. My father sent his top corporate attorney across the Atlantic, armed with proof of my sanity and enough money to bribe 3 physicians. Faced with ruin, the Earl backed down. It should terrify you. Instead, it steadies something inside. Emma endured worse, and here she sits, confident, formidable, untouchable. I understand, you say, turning to Bennett. What do I need to sign? For the next hour, you comb through documents, account openings, trust arrangements, transfer instructions. Bennett walks you through each with care, making certain you grasp every clause. The critical period, he warns, will be the next 2 weeks. We must move discreetly before the Duke realizes what's happening. Once the funds are secured, his leverage weakens. And if he discovers before then, you ask? Bennett meets your gaze squarely. Then the situation becomes more complicated. Do you have somewhere safe you can go? She can come to me, Catherine says without hesitation. Lord Ashford is away in Scotland for the summer. My house is secure. A piece of the safety net falls into place. You are no longer alone. You have allies. Leaving Bennett's office, parcels and hat boxes in hand to maintain the shopping ruse, you feel the ground shifting beneath you, not collapsing, but settling into something stronger. You are still Duchess of Harrington, yes, still bound to society's demands. But beneath that, you are constructing a foundation of independence, of support, of power that is your own. You did well, Catherine tells you as the carriage rolls toward Harrington House. Bennett was impressed. He's not easily swayed. What happens now, you ask? Now, Emma says with a thin, determined smile, we wait. The machinery is set in motion. Funds will be transferred quietly over the next fortnight. Bennett will handle the details. As for Edward, she exchanges a glance with Catherine, carry on as though nothing has changed. Catherine nods. Give him no reason to suspect. Once your position is secure, you can decide how to act. Challenge him over the mistress, renegotiate terms, or simply go on as you please, knowing you're safe. The carriage halts before Harrington House, tall and austere against the summer sky. Once, it had loomed like a prison. Now it feels different. Still imposing, still steeped in history, but no longer a cage. Just walls you inhabit, for now. Remember, Emma says softly as you step down, you're not alone. The sisterhood stands with you. The sisterhood. The Dollar Duchesses, women who had crossed the Atlantic into marriages like yours, endured, resisted, and emerged stronger. Thank you, you whisper, meaning it more deeply than words can carry. Head held high, you climb the steps, not the frightened bride who first arrived, but someone transformed. The Duchess is still a mask you wear, but now it is one you choose. A performance, deliberate, powerful. Inside, the house hums with quiet efficiency. Edward is absent as expected. Stevens removes your hat and gloves, glancing at the parcels. Successful shopping, Your Grace? Very, you answer smoothly. I'll need these gowns pressed for Chatsworth next month. Of course, and His Grace asked me to remind you, you're dining with Lord and Lady Pembroke tonight. Another dinner, another performance. Yet it feels different now, less a test to survive, more a role on a grand stage. The following days pass in carefully curated normalcy. You attend dinners and musicales, endure Lady Harwick's lessons, earning at last the faint praise of being almost acceptable. You plan for Chatsworth, selecting jewels and gowns with Stephen's aid. And Edward, he notices nothing. His days unfold as always, breakfast at home, afternoons at the club or the racetrack, evenings divided between obligations with you and his secret visits to Chelsea, to her, to Elle. But now, for the first time, you feel ready. Every few days, Bennett sends quiet updates through Catherine. Funds moved, accounts opened, investments secured. Progress is slow, but discretion is essential to avoid suspicion from Edward's bankers or advisors. Meanwhile, the Friday gatherings with the Dollar Duchesses continue, shifting now to practical guidance for your new reality. Clara shares her methods for managing money independently of her husband, Sarah explains how she balances appearances while secretly growing her fortune. Louisa advises on the art of giving society what it expects while guarding one's true self. They married the role, not the woman, she reminds you. So give them the role and keep the woman for yourself. A survival strategy in a world where women exist as little more than ornaments of power. Not ideal, but pragmatic, and you are becoming very pragmatic. Lord James Winters appears occasionally, offering connections and advice. He keeps his distance, never risking your reputation, yet there's an undeniable spark, a friendship that, in another life, could have been more. You are not foolish enough to imagine romance. Your bond to Edward and the Harrington name is ironclad. But James represents something rare, respect, value for who you are, not just your dowry. The weekend at Chadsworth passes in a haze of aristocratic splendor, under the watch of the Duke and Duchess of Devonshire. You move through this rarefied world with growing assurance, no longer the hesitant American bride, but the Duchess of Harrington, poised and confident. Edward notices the shift, puzzled by the new strength in your bearing. On the journey home, he remarks that you've adapted well. You accept his compliment with composure. It helps to know the rules of the game, you tell him. He studies you, then concedes, yes, a game. By late July, Bennett confirms that nearly half your dowry has been secured in accounts beyond Edward's reach. Not the full sum, but enough to guarantee independence. You wonder how to proceed. Confront him, negotiate, or continue quietly. The decision comes sooner than expected. On a stormy Tuesday, Edward storms into the morning room, a telegram in hand. His bank has noticed irregular transfers. You meet his fury with calm. I've secured my future, you tell him firmly. Shock, then rage colors his face. He accuses you of theft, but you stand your ground. It was your father's money that saved Harrington from collapse. For once, he is speechless. When he recovers, suspicion flickers. Winters, has he filled your head with this? No, you reply. This was my choice, my decision. The confrontation unfolds like a duel, his threats of scandal against your quiet assertion that discretion benefits you both. You lay out the truth. Half your dowry is protected, still available for estate needs, but beyond his vices and Chelsea indulgences. Edward cedes, but the reality is unshakable. Resistance would cost him everything. Finally worn down, he asks, what now? Now we continue, you answer. You as Duke, me as Duchess, publicly united, privately independent. Boundaries will be respected. The implication is clear. He may keep his mistress, if discreet, and you will keep your friendships, including Lord James. The terms are unspoken, but the balance of power has shifted. Surprisingly, Edward laughs, a short, admiring sound. You would have made a formidable businessman. You remind him, I learned from my father. He leaves, subdued, accepting the new reality, though not happily. When the door closes, relief floods through you. It was not a victory, but a negotiated peace, perhaps the truest form of marriage in your world. Appearances preserved, power balanced behind closed doors. That evening, Catherine comes, anxious for news. You tell her calmly, we've reached an understanding. Not love, not friendship, but freedom for both of us. Catherine is awed by your transformation. 6 weeks ago, you were a frightened bride. Now you're negotiating terms with a duke. The truth makes you laugh, though her pride in you feels well earned. Later, as Stevens brushes your hair, you study your reflection. Only 21, yet the eyes in the mirror are no longer naive. You have endured betrayal, built alliances, and secured your independence. You are not merely wearing the title of Duchess of Harrington, you are shaping it to fit you. The future stretches ahead. Garden parties, country seasons, carefully staged performances of unity. But behind the facade lies your private strength, your network of women, your safeguarded fortune, perhaps even a kind of happiness, purpose, independence, and respect from those who see the real Charlotte. London, once alien, now feels almost yours, not because you've surrendered to it, but because you've carved out a place within it. Not bad for a dollar princess who crossed the Atlantic only 6 weeks ago, trembling and uncertain. Not bad at all. As night falls, Edward is surely with his mistress in Chelsea. Catherine and the duchesses plot their own quiet strategies. Bennett continues his careful transfers, and you no longer a prisoner, but a woman who has claimed her voice. Rest at last. Tomorrow the performance resumes. But tonight you dream not of fairy tales, but of freedom, friendships, and a future built by your own hand.